देश में मुद्दों की कमी नहीं, कमी है तो सिर्फ उन मुद्दों को सही तरह से पेश करने की। जब नफरती चैनल्स और न्यूज प्लेटफॉर्म्स आपको एक तरफा मुद्दे दिखाकर और फेक एजेंडा परोसने की कोशिश करते हैं, वहीं पर मैं आपके लिए लेकर आऊंगी उन मुद्दों का हर पहलू, ताकि आप इसका फैसला कर सके कि वो मुद्दा कितना सही है। देखिए हमारा खास कार्यक्रम एंगल 360 सोमवार से शुक्रवार हर दिन 7:30 बजे सिर्फ क्यूवाइव नेटवर्क पर। नमस्कार, स्वागत है आपका क्यूवाइव नेटवर्क पर। मैं हूं नीलू व्यास और हमारा खास कार्यक्रम एंगल 360 में आपका स्वागत है। इस समय पूरी दुनिया का फोकस इजराइल और पैलेस्टाइन का के बीच जो युद्ध इस समय छिड़ा हुआ है, और खासकर जो गाजा पट्टी की हम बात करते हैं, उस पर सारा ध्यान केंद्रित है, क्योंकि दोनों तरफ भारी जान माल का नुकसान हुआ है। 7 अक्टूबर को अगर हम आपको बताएं तो हमास, जो कि मिलिटेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, उसने 5,000 रॉकेट इजराइल पर दागे थे। उसके बाद इजराइल ने उसके बदले में रिटेलिएटरी स्ट्राइक्स की, और जिसके बाद काफी जान माल का खतरा हो रहा है। और अब ऐसा लग रहा है कि ग्राउंड इन्वेजन की तैयारी इजराइल करने वाला है। क्या ये युद्ध एक गहरा संकट के रूप में उभर रहा है? क्या यहाँ से बिल्कुल एक तरीके से थर्ड वर्ल्ड वॉर की जैसी स्थिति बन रही है? आज जो यूएस के जो बड़े अधिकारी हैं, एंटनी ब्लिंकन, आज वो वहां पर पहुंचे हुए थे, इजराइल के लोगों से मिले। बताया जा रहा है कि वो पैलेस्टाइन भी जाएंगे और महमूद अब्बास से भी शायद वो मिले। लेकिन जो पूरा इस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट का जो ओरिजिन है, जो सोर्स है, ऐसा लगता है कि पैलेस्टाइन को ही असली विलेन बनाने में इजराइल लगा हुआ है। इजराइल कोई अकाउंटेबिलिटी नहीं चाहता है। और फिर ये सब पहलू पर तो हम बात करेंगे, लेकिन साथ में भारत जैसे देश, जो आज भारत, अमेरिका जैसे जो देश हैं, जो आज इजराइल के साथ खड़े हैं, आखिर वो लोग क्या संदेश दे रहे हैं? जो भारत का स्टैंड रहा है, उसके बारे में भी हम बात करेंगे। इस समय हमारे साथ फॉर्मर डिप्लोमैट वीना सीकरी जुड़ रही हैं। वीना जी, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है क्यूवाइव नेटवर्क पर। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर जॉइनिंग मैम। और ये जो पैलेस्टाइन इजराइल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है, how is it really shaping up, ma'am? Do we see the deepening of the crisis further and further?
मेरा ख्याल है कि सबसे पहले जो अटैक हुआ हमास की तरफ से इजराइल पे, ये एक बहुत ही सीरियस टेररिस्ट अटैक था। एंड आई थिंक सबसे पहली बात जो हमें रिकग्नाइज और स्वीकार करनी है वो ये है कि टेररिज्म कैन नॉट बी कंडोन्ड। और ये जो उन्होंने किया कि पैराग्लाइडर्स के थ्रू 250 लोगों को, कॉन्सर्ट में थे 260 लोगों को, उनको मार दिया, जान से मार दिया। और बिल्कुल ही एक बेस्टियल क्रूअल तरीके से उन्होंने बच्चों को मारा है, उनके सर तन से जुदा किया है। और ये जो उनके एक्शन थे, बाय सी, बाय एयर, बाय रोड, क्रॉस द बॉर्डर, उन्होंने जो मल्टी प्रॉन्ग अटैक माउंट किया है, जिसमें इतने लोग घायल हुए हैं, मरे हैं इजराइल में। सबसे पहले इसको तो कंडेम करना बहुत जरूरी है, क्योंकि मेरा ख्याल है कि जो हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा है दैट हम बिल्कुल वी डू नॉट कंडोन टेरर एट ऑल एंड वी स्टैंड विद द पीपल ऑफ इजराइल। वो इसलिए क्योंकि जो भी टेररिस्ट अटैक करता है, देयर इज नो सच थिंग एज गुड टेररिस्ट, बैड टेररिस्ट, रूट कॉज टेररिस्ट, ऐसी कोई चीज नहीं है। टेररिज्म इज टेररिज्म एंड it must be accepted as such, and action must be taken against them as such. This by no means does this in any way conflict with what India has always maintained about supporting a two-state solution in Israel, between Israel and the Palestinians, and ये हमारा position हमेशा रहा है और आज तक भी है। Now ये सबसे पहले हमें ये एनालाइज करना है कि ये टेररिस्ट अटैक क्यों हुआ, कैसे हुआ, किसके मदद से हुआ, वेपनरी कहाँ से आई, फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस कहाँ से आया। हमें पता है कि ईरान, कतार बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर दिए जा रहे हैं हमास को। हो सकता है सोचा गया था कि ये ह्यूमैनिटेरियन एड की तरफ से दे रहे हैं, लेकिन देखा जाए तो वो उन्होंने अपने इसको वेपनाइज कर दिया, पूरे एड को उन्होंने वेपनाइज किया और बहुत ही स्किल्ड मैनर में ट्रेनिंग ली। आफ्टर ऑल पैराग्लाइडर्स को ऐसे आना, आर्म्ड पैराग्लाइडर्स, ये तो ट्रेनिंग की बात है। और फिर उन्होंने वेपनरी, जो रॉकेटरी अक्यूमुलेट की। ये कहाँ से हुआ, ये रॉकेटरी कहाँ से है, ये वेपन्स कहाँ से हैं? आई थिंक इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू गेट टू द बॉटम ऑफ दिस, टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई सच एन अटैक वाज अलाउड टू हैपन, why it was allowed to build up. अब ये बात है कि
Veena ma'am, would it be right to say that Israel was actually caught unawares Israel is known for its perfect intelligence systems. And if a country like Israel was caught unaware, then what would you really say? Was it caught napping? Were they not familiar that, this kind of an attack could happen on Israel? What would you really say?
Well, certainly it has been an intelligence failure on the behalf of the Israeli Defense Forces. By all means, yes, certainly they did not expect it at all. But again, I think that was this because of that understanding between Israel and Hamas? Was there a kind of understanding that, in exchange for all the people coming in to work in Israel from the Gaza Strip, the people who were allowed then the energy and fuel, the electricity, water, all that there was a kind of a cooperative existence, of course, between them, but it has been a complete intelligence failure. There's absolutely no two ways about that, and I'm certain that within Israel this must be being looked at very seriously, to be an intelligence failure which spans maybe years, because all this has not happened in a day. It has happened over a period of years. You can't prepare for an attack like this in a day. It has taken years. So what was the understanding? What was going on? Who was helping them? They say Qatar was actually more or less of a go-between Hamas and Israel, and making sure that the people of Gaza Strip got their facilities to live properly, develop themselves, and so on. And the understanding was that the financial assistance being given would be used for these purposes. So all this, the breakdown, it's been a complete breakdown. And now the retaliation, that is being planned. We know that, as you said, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, perhaps even accompanied by, somebody was saying,
Yes.
UK Foreign Secretary as well, James Cleverly, they are there and they're going to support Israel and talk about how this can be contained. But I think certainly the question of the hostages as well. The cruel treatment of the hostages, of 150 people who are there. How are they going to be released? How is it going to happen? It's a huge blow to global security.
Another story which is just developing. Just a few minutes back, there was a breaking news that Israelis, they are striking and targeting Syria's two main airports. Sanjay Kapoor has also joined us, international affairs expert. Thank you so much, Sanjay. I'll come to you, but I want to go to Veena Sikri again. That Israelis are striking Syria's two main airports. Now, Why are they doing so? Why are they striking at the airports in Syria?
Well, the one thing, as we said, Israel is fully focused on the Gaza Strip. They have amassed some 300,000 reservists, and they are all moving towards the Gaza Strip. Now, the fear at this point is of a multi-pronged attack on Israel. And of course, here, Syria and Lebanon, the Hezbollah, all these groups, Hezbollah again supported by Iran, what are their reactions going to be? Yesterday, we did hear that there was some aerial infiltration into Israel from Lebanon. So certainly they would be fearing that. Where are these aircraft taking off from? Where are they coming from? Where are they landing? Where are they taking off from? So certainly Israel is trying to prevent any kind of a multi-pronged attack on their country, so that they can deal with what they think is the prime problem in this case, which is the Gaza Strip and the attacks that have emanated from there.
Right. But another thing which I want to ask you, Madam Sikri, is that you condemn the terror strikes done by Hamas. That is fine. But what is Israel's action amounting to? Is it not similar to what Hamas has done? The kind of strike which Israel is inflicting on Gaza, on Palestine, what would that amount to? Is it not tantamount to something like a war crime or a genocide? Because a lot of civilians are being killed in the course of it.
I think that this is the point, that the terror strike by Hamas has led to a warlike situation. It is a warlike situation, and Israel is calling it a warlike situation. And now the question is, this is why the talks are taking place. This is why people like, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken are there, and they're trying to prevent this from escalating. So obviously, there is going to be, there's very serious discussions on this. Security Council meeting has been called by Brazil, who is the president of the Security Council this month, and he has rushed back from Asia to New York for the Security Council meeting. So obviously these efforts are very much afoot to prevent any warlike situation from developing. But I think that at this point, we must deal with the terrorist attack and see where that those strands lead to, why did it happen, what was the background, the weaponry, the finance, all that, then maybe you can stop a warlike situation and get a solution. We've always looked to a two-state solution in this region, to to allow peaceful living and development between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Right. You were talking about the two-state solution. Sanjay, if I may come to you. Now, what is happening really is that, people and countries like India, like America, they are supporting Israel on this particular issue. But while they are supporting, there is also a feeling amongst a large section of people that the cause of the Palestine, that is being overlooked somewhere, and we need to take that also into context as to why this problem has originated. We cannot, like, of course, the activity by Hamas has to be condemned unequivocally, but countries like India are not talking about the Palestinian cause. I mean, say for example, look at Prime Minister Narendra Modi's stand on Twitter, or the X, which the post which he has put out. He says, "I stand in solidarity with Israel." So there is a certain bias towards Israel without talking about the Palestinian context as well, which, of course, in the past, prime ministers like Jawaharlal Nehru, like Atal Bihari Vajpayee, like Indira Gandhi, they have spoken about the Palestine freedom as well. And this seems to be a slight departure from the earlier governments which they have taken on this particular issue. What would you say to that? I think you're muted. Sanjay, you'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Sanjay,
Yeah,
are you connected?
I think
Yeah.
it's a significant departure, if you ask me, primarily because we have always stood by the Palestinians despite very severe provocations. Israelis always wanted us to support them, but we had a point of view. We thought that it is part of our greater understanding of how colonial occupation in different parts of the world has contributed in the state the Palestinians are in. But if you look at it, even this time around, there is a great amount of conversation which is going on in India. But we must be mindful of what is also happening in Israel. I mean, if you read the publications like Haaretz, which has been there for long years, it's extremely critical of how Mr. Netanyahu may have handled the crisis. There is a very deep division that exists in Israel about many things, including the way the judicial reforms were brought in. In fact, there was opposition which was aired by Mossad, the opposition aired by the armed forces. In fact, the pilots decided to stand down if the judicial reforms initiated. But our conversation, in a certain way, is totally unmindful of this. It is taking a kind of partisan view primarily because there is a certain ideology which is driving it. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at it
But
in
Sanjay,
our
if I
own
may
system,
interrupt you, if I may
Nilu,
interrupt you,
just a moment, just a moment.
right?
What I'm saying, if you see it in our own system, MEA has not come out with a statement. They are more circumspect in a certain way. We have been rather quiet. I mean, the Prime Minister may have taken a stand. He's a political person, but MEA, cognizant of the past, cognizant of our history, has not done that. I think Madam Sikri would have something to say on that. That there are implications in how we articulate a foreign policy. It is just not limited to a tiny country like Israel. There's great fascination for Israel, but there are Arab countries with whom we do business. We also have large number of people working in them, and they
Yes,
and I
that's
don't
right.
know how it is going to play out because there is a great amount of discussion which is taking place between various countries of the Middle East. You had a long 45 minutes conversation between Iran and Saudi Arabia today, between the two heads of states. You had the Crown Prince talking with the President Raisi from Iran, and you had things that are happening. In fact, you are raising the issue about bombing of the Damascus airport. One of the things that has come to light is that the defense minister of Iran was to land in Damascus, but the bombing took place, and I think it became difficult for the plane to land. And the aircraft in which
Yes.
the defense minister was going was also had people from Quds Force and from different organizations, and they probably wanted to have a discussion with the Syrian leadership about what to do. I think the fear is the war is getting larger, and that is manifested by the fact that you had an aircraft carrier from US which has parked itself. In fact, President Putin of Russia has raised this question: why has the aircraft carrier from the U.S. Gerald Ford come to the Mediterranean Sea? What are the implications? What is the U.S. fearing? What is likely to happen? So, in my reckoning, there is a spread of the war, the spread of hostilities, which we were not expecting. It was a terror strike, yes. It was very bad, very gruesome that so many people died. It should have been limited. But now you have a situation where you have the Israeli forces which are getting into Gaza. There is the long feared, fear war in which you drive out all the people living in Gaza to either Egypt or wherever that is coming true, and you don't know how it is all going to play out. And India can't stay
Absolutely.
away in a certain way, the way it has been following it.
Right. Now, Ambassador Sikri, if I may ask you, what is the fallout which you really see, the way it was going to impact India? And why I'm asking particularly about India is that a lot of things are at stake. Recently, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was seen talking in G20 during the G20 summit, about this Middle East Economic Europe corridor. Now, what happens to that? Uh, uh, that's the immediate fallout. Rise in oil prices. There are a lot of Muslims staying in various parts of the world. What happens to that? There is a sense of insecurity in them with just one post which the prime minister has put out. So do you think that there is a certain fallout on India as well, and there are a lot of things which are at stake for India by this one statement which has not been put out by MEA but by prime minister's post?
No, let's be very clear on one thing. Prime Minister's post is fully consistent with India's stand against terrorism. We know we have been through 26/11. The world has been through 9/11. We have had attacks in Uri, in Pulwama. Have we kept quiet? Have we not taken action? Have we not taken retaliatory action? We are not no longer people are going to keep quiet in the face of terrorist attacks. So when we are prepared to defend our own dignity in the face of terrorist attacks, we have to see that terrorist attacks everywhere have to be condemned similarly. I know exactly. I agree that yes, Prime Minister Netanyahu is being blamed within his own country. All that is fine. That is their own internal problem. They have to look into the intelligence failure. They have to look into the reason what this happened. But we also know that worldwide there was a move going on for a peaceful resolution between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And of course, you mentioned IMEC. That is a very good thing. I think MEA is always fully in line with what the Prime Minister is saying. There is absolutely no doubt about that, because foreign policy is made by the Prime Minister's office in consultation with the Foreign Minister and implemented by the Ministry of External Affairs. This is absolutely clear. I do not think that there is any difference on that count. In fact, the Ministry of External Affairs is fully engaged with bringing back those citizens, about 18,000 of them who are in Israel, and those of them who wish to come back have been fully accommodated. And Operation Ajay has been launched to bring them back. The first aircraft has left today for Israel to bring back the first lot of citizens who have expressed their views in coming back. Certainly, this event, the Hamas attack on Israel, is going to be a game changer in world geopolitics. Certainly, the talks that were ongoing between Israel and Saudi Arabia can be seen as coming to a shuddering halt by the reaction that the Saudi government and Mohammed bin Salman have shown, and the talks that are now going on. So that is very clear. This will happen, but I think that the only way to end terrorism is to take a stand against it. There can be no whataboutery about that. I think it is this whataboutery that creates the problems of taking a stand against terrorism, that dilutes the stand against terrorism, and then encourages those who perpetrate terrorism to go at it again and again. We've seen that repeatedly happening, even in our own country. So I think we are very aware of the reality of having a very firm and unequivocal stand on combating terrorism. And certainly by that, I don't mean that it has not changed. Repeatedly, I want to say that there will be no change in India's position in support of a two-state solution in Israel between the Palestinians and I think that India can themselves play a role in this, in bringing it about. And let us see also, and I would like to also say that if you just see that even within the West Bank, what is the reaction of the people in Ramallah and around that region? You don't see them rising up against Israel like has happened, like the Hamas has done. So it's a very complex situation,
No,
and
but Madam
certainly
Sikri, yes, Ambassador Sikri, you were just saying that India's stated position, of course, has been, and they have supported the two nation theory. But Sanjay, if I may come to you, whatever India's stated position was on Israel and Palestine issue, but for now, in the current context, there is a certain bias which Prime Minister Narendra Modi has shown towards Israel. Now, if I may ask you very candidly, is this going to cost India dearly?
As I would agree with the Ambassador Sikri, it's a very complicated situation. There are nothing which is like hard and fast in the very evolving situation. Prime Minister took a stand against terror, which is I think everybody took a stand against terror. You don't want to look at the backstory. There is a backstory to it. Ambassador Sikri is probably knows more than I do or you do about the backstory about how it all evolved, whether it was in 1948, 15th of May, Nakba, and subsequently 67, 73 wars, and everything. What all that has contributed, and even the fact that Gaza is considered to be an open prison where people find it very difficult. So those things are there. But an act of terror has to be criticized, and it is being criticized. And I'm sure everybody in our world at the moment are actually trying to figure out how to deal
No,
with
what
it.
I'm trying to
I,
understand,
I
Sanjay,
agree. I agree with. Listen, I agree with Ambassador Sikri that India should have taken a stand about mediating on this issue. India has tremendous goodwill with the
absolutely.
Palestinians. I know for sure about that. In the Arab world, we have great amount of respect, and I think we have the credentials to actually intervene and say that, look here, we'll try to do that. We may
No, but
have,
Sanjay, my
by taking a
my
stand
point
in
is,
favor of Israel, we may have hurt our cause a little bit by trying to
right,
show that we are with them. But even now, we can always speak a language of reconciliation, a language of peace, and try to do that.
absolutely. No, this is exactly what I was going to ask you, that if we are condemning Hamas, which we should, that's a terror strike which they have done, but why not condemn Netanyahu as well in open words?
I don't think that would have been possible. India and Prime Minister Modi has a very good relationship with Bibi Netanyahu, and it has been stated time and again. And you don't criticize your friends. I mean, he could have, at best, if he had any reservation, kept silent on this issue, but he would not have gone public and criticized Prime Minister Netanyahu. And we have a significant defense relationship. We have, uh, a relationship which shows up at different levels. And I think they are major exporters of surveillance technology, defense technology, much of what is actually used there in Gaza and other places. So I don't think one should have expected the Prime Minister to not stand up for his friend, especially at this time of crisis. But subsequent to that, I think there is a need for recalibration. How do you deal with it? How do you manage the
Absolutely.
fallout? What do you do about it? Because we cannot be actually walking the same path. We can't be militaristic. That goes against contrary to our nature. We have to find a middle ground, and that is where we should be going.
Right. Okay. One last question to Madam Sikri before we wind up the program. Ambassador Sikri, today is day 6 of this entire conflict between Palestine and Israel. How soon do we see this conflict ending, or do you further feel that it's going to lead to a deepening of the crisis? Or do you see some kind of an early resolution coming in with people from America reaching there, and then some kind of a deliberation happening on both sides?
Well, I think some retaliation by Israel on the Gaza Strip is already ongoing. For example, one of the steps that Israel has announced that they will not resume water, electricity, fuel supply to Gaza until the hostages are back home. So that is the first step. And certainly, if the hostages are released, and I think there's talk that even Qatar is trying to negotiate the release of the hostages and so on, and there's negotiations for that. So the first step right now is the 150 or so hostages that are there within the Gaza Strip, and the absolute demand, unequivocal demand by Israel to get them back. So if this happens, one can see maybe that from there onwards, some discussion, negotiation could start. And I think I want to say very clearly that India's unequivocal stand against terror is going to stand India in good stead in any negotiations down the line, because you cannot compromise with terror and then negotiate about peace. compromising with terror and trying to negotiate with peace after compromising with terror is never going to lead to a lasting solution, because it only leads to the people who have perpetrated the terrorism. It encourages them to plan for their next attack. And we know that actually this is also the criticism that maybe even Prime Minister Netanyahu may have had a deal with Hamas, that, we will learn to live with each other, and you don't do this and we won't do that. But everything is out of the window now. Everything is out of the window now because of this terrorist attack, which the Israelis never saw at all coming, a great failure of their intelligence. So let us see what happens. As I said, the first step is the return of the hostages. After that, let us see what happens after the visit of Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and the British Foreign Secretary, and then Security Council. If at all anybody is in the mood for a negotiated compromise, there are plenty of straws in the wind about that. But I think, first of all, this misuse of humanitarian assistance, what has happened? Where did they get their finances from? Where did they get their weaponry from? I think these questions are very, very, I mean, one of the discussions going on is that they were using, the Hamas is using some of the weapons left behind by America in Afghanistan. That also has come out in the media. So where did that, sorry?
Ukraine.
So
Ukraine. Yeah.
And how did it come via Ukraine? How did it get there?
Of course, this is an important question. So from where,
ammunition, but these weapons, I mean, we don't know.
right.
So
No, you
Ukrainian
raised a
weapons is
valid
another
point.
one, but the American weapons left behind in Afghanistan is another one as well.
No, you have raised a valid point as to how they got their infrastructure in place and how they mounted such a big offensive. But Sanjay, if I may ask you, I was speaking to the Consul General of Israel, who serves in South India, and on the phone today, and where she said that she's very clear that Israel will not stop till all the installations of Hamas, their infrastructure is completely demolished. Now, if that happens, and of course, we cannot overlook the fact that a lot of civilians also will be killed, given the geography of the Gaza Strip and how narrow lanes are there, a densely populated area. Civilians will be killed. Now, can Netanyahu absolve himself of the accountability? This is my last question to you, because will Netanyahu hide behind the fact that, look, this was a terror act and we need to retaliate eye for an eye? But what about his accountability? Who will hold him accountable for this genocide, for this war crime?
These are very, very complicated questions because there is a certain amount of legitimacy that he has earned primarily because of hitting back after a terror attack in Israel. That is something which is undeniable, and that is the reason why many countries have come to his support. But the fact of the matter is that when you retaliate, time and again, the Geneva Convention, the international norms that are there, they should be weighing on your mind. You cannot have a defense minister of the country saying that all rules are off. You can do pretty much what you want when you enter Gaza. It means you can kill, you can rape, you can do whatever. You cannot be doing what the terrorists may have done, because if you are an organized force, you have to conduct yourself by rules, certain regulations, certain restraints. So those kind of things, I think this Israel has to be mindful. If Mr. Blinken is getting in, he should be telling them that, look here, you may be angry, but you have to restrain, because it could spill over to a far more area than you can imagine. Because when you talk of Palestine, you talk of a diaspora. It is not just limited to Gaza, it is spread all over the world, and it gets into their DNA. We may not know it, but even the simple fact that they were compelled to leave home in 1948 on 15th of May, this will remember time and again. They know it, and this will also remain in their memory. And secondly, I want to tell you, there is a very, very big thing that is being used by social media. That's fake news. We don't even know what is right and what is wrong, because you have a very organized, you can say, entity which is pushing, peddling information which is unverified. I mean, you look at the slaughter of 40 kids that have been talked about. President Biden has talked about that it was not there. Later on, he relented. Then it has to be corroborated by X. Then it had to go down, not to confirmed by somebody. It is total confusion. It has become a situation where nobody knows how many people are getting killed, how they've been killed, where they've been killed. So I
Absolutely.
think that's the truth has become a major casualty. And I think whenever there is something like this has to be fought, there has to be a conscious attempt by all sides to ensure that only truth is driving the actions, not fake news.
Absolutely. So tough times ahead in front of the entire world because of this Palestine conflict. Israel conflict, but all eyes would be on how this crisis can be mitigated in the days to come. Today is day 6, and we already see a lot of airstrikes and attacks on both sides. But yes, what would be the efforts to mitigate this crisis, to lessen the burden of the death, destruction, and mayhem? All eyes would be on that. Thank you so much, Ambassador Sikri, Sanjay Kapoor. It was wonderful to have you on the program. And share this video as widely as you can, and stay tuned to Qvive. देश में मुद्दों की कमी नहीं, कमी है तो सिर्फ उन मुद्दों को सही तरह से पेश करने की। जब नफरती चैनल्स और न्यूज प्लेटफॉर्म्स आपको एक तरफा मुद्दे दिखाकर और फेक एजेंडा